Well, I'm Heather Cook. I am here at the Career Center, and I'm excited to get to talk with you all today about kind of managing your anxiety during the interview process. I do have a background in clinical mental health. So, just a disclaimer though, although I am a licensed professional counselor today, I'm acting not in the role of clinician, but presenting as a career counselor. So just to keep in mind, anxiety can be extremely debilitating. And if you're experiencing any extreme symptoms outside of interviewing, please seek the advice of a counselor or the counseling center here at Clemson. I just wanted to make sure to put that in there. But I do have some background working with mental health. So I wanted to put this together and share with you a few tips and strategies to approach the interview process and manage your mental health while you're doing so. So before we actually dive into the content, as you have seen many times, the core competencies that the Career Center want you to know about, want you to start working on developing and really being able to articulate your experiences based on these 9 core competencies. These are the things that have been identified as important skills that are needed in the world of work, graduate school, even in academics. So, although we're mainly focusing today on self-awareness and communication, I think you could see how all of these will really kind of help you along the way. So, keep that in mind as we're talking. And I do have a Menti so you can participate a little bit. So, if you want to join menti.com and put in that number, you'll have an opportunity to participate a little bit, to kind of make it a little bit more about you all, not necessarily about me just chatting and talking to you. All right. So, what is anxiety? I think most people have a decent idea of what anxiety is. Many people have experienced it in many ways, and it can present in many forms. So, when we're thinking about interviewing, this is a brief list, obviously. There are a lot of other symptoms. But when you're thinking about getting ready for an interview, you can have anxiety days before, what I would consider kind of anticipatory anxiety. And then right as you're getting ready to go into an interview, that's definitely a time where anxiety shows up. And then sometimes even after the interview, you're all amped up, your anxiety gets there, and kind of keeps you there for a little while. So obviously nervousness, anxiousness, panic. There are some physical symptoms that go along with this, as well as some thoughts. So increased heart rate, racing thoughts, excessive worry, kind of that loop that we all get into sometimes. But when you're interviewing, I want you to make sure to know and to expect some nervousness is going to be there. It's normal. That's kind of what amps us up to do our best. It's just when it crosses over into the extreme that sometimes we are not at our best, and anxiety can be difficult to manage. So, as I said with Menti, I'm going to let you guys participate a little bit. Go ahead and type in what anxiety feels like to you, if you don't mind. And if anyone's having trouble with it, definitely put that in the chat and I'll make sure that it's still working. Oh, there we go. Overthinking, uneasy, upset stomach, those physical symptoms, it can be very scary. That tight chest, sometimes that's related to our breathing, the heavy breathing that's mentioned there. So anxiety shows up in a lot of different ways. You want to make sure, oh, nausea, that's the worst. When you're trying to do something, you feel like you might throw up. Pressure. So I think just looking at this, I can tell that most of us have a pretty decent idea of what anxiety is and what it feels like. So as you're thinking about preparing for an interview, I'm going to focus a little bit first on getting ready for an interview that are kind of career related, career development related. And then we're going to talk a little bit about managing mental health and anxiety in that realm. So these are great answers. Thank you for participating. I appreciate that. So as far as preparing for an interview, this is something that, anxiety can really trick you. It can really trick you into thinking you don't know anything. So the more prepared you are for the interview, the less likely that trick is going to be there. So you want to make sure that you know yourself, you know the company, you've researched the company and studied the position description. You've reread your resume so that you know what you want to highlight in the interview. And then you also want to have some thoughtful questions prepared for the interviewer. That's where we want to change focus a little bit. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that at the end. So, the more you prepare, the less likely your anxiety is going to get you on this. You want to also think about the logistics. A lot of times when you are have an in-person interview, you want to make sure you know where it is. How long is it going to take to get there? Anticipate if there's going to be a delay. If it's on campus, parking is terrible. So you want to plan for that. And you want to make sure that you understand from the interviewer when you're expected, where you're expected, and what they expect you to bring. If it's virtual, the obvious, I mean, we have been in the virtual world for quite some time now, and students are great at this, but you do want to make sure nothing trips you up there. The internet connection, if your desk is disorganized, you go ahead and check and make sure your camera's working that day, make sure Zoom is updated, make sure all the things that could possibly increase your anxiety have been accounted for. And one thing in virtual world is you want to make sure that you know who's actually starting the call, so you're not sitting there waiting. Most of the time it's going to be the interviewer, but in some cases they'll want you to call. So just something to keep in mind. I always put that in there because in my interview here, I actually did not know, and I ended up calling and kind of embarrassed myself a little, but they still hired me, so it's all good. So planning can help kind of reduce your anxiety. But then when we get down to it, anxiety may show up. And if it's there, the more you focus on eliminating it, sometimes you just focus on that and it gets more and more and more. It kind of increases. You're not managing your symptoms, you're really focusing on them. So instead of thinking about elimination of anxiety, accept that it may be there and think of ways that you can be ready and be prepared. All right. Something you also want to do, you want to practice. Practice your answers aloud. That 30-second commercial sounds great in your head. You might want to practice that so you know what it sounds like when you speak it aloud, because sometimes it doesn't sound like you thought. Sometimes it sounds a little bit rehearsed. Sometimes you forget something. So go ahead and practice. You can do mock interviews in person with us or in Clemson Job Link. You can do some online and just watch yourself review your recording. But also friends and family, they can help you with this. I know they know you and they can kind of help you identify where your strengths are. You also want to think about a lot of athletes use this in visualizing success. So if you imagine yourself at ease and confident, hopefully that will translate into the actual event that you're heading for. So, a few ways to lower your stress before an interview or in preparation for an interview. Talk to your friends. If you have friends that have time to sit down and just talk you through the anxiety, not necessarily about the job. It can be about the job. But sometimes even just talking about something that's not relevant will bring your heart rate down a little bit. Journaling or writing down your thoughts is always something that helps with any mental health issue. But with anxiety in particular, if you write it down, sometimes it stays there. You're not in that loop. It gets out of your brain for a minute. Some people like to listen to music. It depends on who you are. Some people don't need the extra stimulation before they're getting ready for an interview, but listening to music can be very helpful. If you can think of jokes, laugh, do something that's fun. But also just think about, pay attention to your body. You may be clenching your jaw, you may be sitting with your shoulders up, and you don't recognize it. So kind of that body audit, figuring out what is my body doing and how can I get into a more relaxed state. And then as you start thinking about your next steps after the interview, I want you to start thinking about, no matter the outcome, no matter how it went, something to look forward to, a plan to celebrate. Celebrate it being over. Celebrate that you think you did a great job. Celebrate that, it didn't go how I wanted, but now I've had the experience and I can add that into my next steps. So looking forward to something. And it doesn't have to be a monetary thing. It can be something like going for a walk. It can be spending time with friends or family or pets. But it can be things like taking yourself out to a place for dinner or coffee. Maybe if you really want to get a massage. Those kinds of things can help you anticipate the next steps after the interview. And it also helps you think forward. So if you're stuck on the interview, the anxiety might ramp up, but the interview's not going to last forever. So it's just like with feelings do come and go. Emotions come and go. Anxiety is an emotion, and anxiety will pass. So something to look forward to. So keep that in mind. So I'd like for you to put in here some ways that you can think of to lower stress that might help you when you're thinking about interviewing for your next step. Positive self-talk, being active, exercise, yes, guiding, breathing exercises. We're going to do one of those in a minute. These are all great. These are great. I love it. Someone who will empower you. There are people in your world who hopefully are your cheerleader. Talk to those people. They will help you feel great about yourself. Oh, cleaning house. I love that. Just kind of something to keep going. Let's see, grounding exercises. Oh, it sounds like we have some people who are well versed in managing anxiety. Thank you again for participating. So maybe there's something on here that you didn't think about that will help you the next time that you are going to do that. Someone put in the chat, count to 10, definitely. The counting, it's another way to ground. So grounding techniques are something where you're focusing on like where you are, you're focusing on the chair, on the ground beneath you. It kind of helps you to start thinking more in the physical, what's going on right now, versus anticipating what's going to happen in the future. So what's going to happen when you end up in the interview. Square breathing. We're going to do that in a minute. Thanks for playing. All right. You also can think about ways to increase your confidence before you go into an interview. Couple of things. You've already been chosen for this interview. So you've already made it through one of the major steps. And if you've been applying to positions, you know how hard it is to get a response. A lot of times you don't even hear back. You apply on the internet, next thing you know, you're in the internet black hole. So now that you're in an interview process, you've been selected. There's something about you that the interviewer felt like, you know what, this person is someone who might be a good fit. Let's bring them in, get to know them, and get to know how they might fit in the company. You also want to think about what you're going to bring to the role. You've already done your research. You know about the company, you know about the position description. Focus on yourself and what strengths you have. This is where those cheerleaders and people who are great can help you out. Someone who knows you and likes you. Ask them for some words of encouragement. And if you feel like you need additional things, you can always ask them, what is it about me that you would think makes me a good employee? So thinking about it in that way, what would you tell a friend in your position? I think we all can be so hard on ourselves. The critical thinking, we kind of overdo it when it comes to thinking about ourselves. But we would tell a friend some very good advice. So think about if your best friend or even just an acquaintance was getting ready for an interview, what are the things that you would tell them? That in turn is going to tell you what might work for you. If you haven't heard about the Superman pose, many times you'll see this on the internet a lot, but you're just standing in the Superman pose, not in the interview, but before the interview. Sometimes people say you need to hold that pose for 2 to 4 minutes. It's a little strange if you're there, but you could, be in the restroom, be in your, a half Superman pose in the car. But you want to think about that. It's just kind of that standing up straight, hands on your hips, and really that confidence builder. The way that you present can help you to decrease your anxiety. It's like you're acting like Superman, but you're not really. A positive mantra. A mantra is just kind of a quote or a phrase that you might mention to yourself, kind of have over and over in your mind. There are a lot of different ones. I'm going to give you an opportunity to maybe post yours in the next slide. And then thinking about what's your walk-up song? What's your hype music? You're not actually going to walk in with that music, but you might be thinking it as you walk into the interview, as you drive there. And then think about something that you want to like exit with, your confidence builder, your exit song. Again, you're not necessarily going to sing them or listen to them while you're at the interview, but music is your thing and you want a walk-up song. It's just like you're kind of pretending that you are on television or in the movies. It's pretty fun. So Give you an opportunity to put in here either a favorite phrase, mantra, entrance song. If you want to put in your exit song, you can do that as well. Build Me Up Buttercup. I love it. All I Can Do Is My Best. Whitney Houston. Got a Whitney Houston fan. You got this. Tiger Rag. Yeah, if you're Clemson. Tiger Rag. Eye of the Tiger. I Am Enough. Some people like the Rocky theme. Jeezy, Kanye West, Going Bad. So just thinking about what's important to you, what really hypes you up, and what's going to help you. So you don't necessarily, if you don't have a mantra or an entrance song, just think of something that's going to help you feel strong, like Beyonce's Run the World. Yep, there's the Rocky song. Anything else? I know some people will be like, this too will pass. This will be over soon. So you don't want to get focused on things that are negative, but sometimes you got to think, you know what, this is not going to last forever, and I'm going to put my best foot forward. All right. Well, thanks for playing. So I wanted to talk a little bit about your breathing. So your breathing can change when you're anxious. It can be rapid, it can be shallow, it can be something that kind of you feel like you're hyperventilating. So then you get worried about hyperventilating and then you hyperventilate a little bit more. So there's something called box breathing, and someone did mention that in the Menti. So we'll do the little exercise on the next slide, but it's where you breathe in through your nose for 5 counts. You hold for 5 if you can, and you exhale for 5, and then you pause for 5, and you repeat. This is a way to slow that nervous system, the parasympathetic nervous system. It will slow it down and help you kind of maintain and start to get control over your breathing, and your heart rate will come down some. And anxiety and heart rate, it's a lot. So we're going to listen to this.
There are times when we all experience feelings of stress or anxiety. In these moments, you can use your breath to help calm those feelings. Box breathing is a simple relaxation technique that can help you reset your breath and return to its normal rhythm. You can do it anywhere, anytime. Box breathing can help reduce stress and improve mood. It can also help with controlling and managing emotions. It's very easy to learn. Imagine breathing around a box. Inhale as you visualize going up one side of the box, gradually filling your lungs with air. When you reach the top, hold your breath for 1 to 5 seconds as you picture going across the top of the box. Exhale gradually as you imagine traveling down the other side of the box. Pause again for 1 to 5 seconds as you go along the bottom of the box. Then repeat. This can be done 7 to 10 times in a row, focusing on the breath. If you can do it sitting down with your feet grounded, that will help too. But really, it can be done anywhere. Box.
All right. We won't keep going. It goes on for a little bit. But thinking about that, practicing, if that's something that doesn't work for you, I know some people find that they're too anxious, they can't slow down long enough to do this. But in most cases, focusing on your breath and controlling your breath and kind of coming up with a way to get yourself focused on right now, being mindful of your breathing, being mindful of what you're doing, being mindful of where you are and that you're actually okay. A lot of times anxiety, like I said, it tricks us into thinking things that, we're going to die, or it's not going to work, or I'm going to be terrible. So you got to think about who you are, where you are, and breathing can help with that. And I mentioned we were going to talk a little bit about changing focus. Anxiety is very internal. It's something that we feel. It's something that we're thinking. And many times during an interview, we get so anxious, we get lost in ourselves, and we're not focused on the external, which is what really is going on. The interview is happening. So if you can get yourself to Control your breathing enough where you can listen to the questions, where you kind of connect with the other person sitting across from you, thinking before you respond, and being thoughtful with your questions. They want to get to know you. They don't want to get to know your anxiety. Now, I have had a lot of different interviews with students, and I'll tell you, because of my mental health background, I'm pretty open to a student telling me that they've had anxiety before, but you got to read the room. You got to kind of know, is this person somebody that I can kind of mention, hey, I'm pretty anxious? I've even had one of my ambassadors came in, and one of the first things that I asked was, tell me about yourself. And they talked to me about their anxiety disorder. Now, for me, that really meant a lot. That was a very vulnerable statement. It may not be something that you want to bring into the conversation, but it can happen, and it can be appropriate to talk about your anxiety a little bit, as long as you're just not going down that rabbit hole. It's more about what you're going to bring to the table, not that you're bringing your anxiety to the table. Ultimately, being yourself is going to get you a long way. So now that you've done all that, you've changed the focus, you've gotten through however long this was, this is where you start thinking about, I really did do it. It's something that I hope went well. If it didn't, what can I do next time? This is a process. Interviewing does not come naturally to a lot of people. This is something that can get better over time, and the anxiety can decrease over time the more you do it. You want to make sure that you are noting to yourself the things you did well, not everything you did wrong. One thing you did well is you showed up. Another thing you did well is you probably answered several questions very strongly. If you feel like, you know what, I didn't do so great on that question, what do you want to do next time? How do you want to improve? But still, you did it. That's the outcome, whether you get the job or get the position or get into the grad school, you actually did this. This is something new for a lot of people. And once you do it once, it tamps it down a little bit. Try again. If you feel like you need a lot of help with that, we are here for that. We are here for you at the Career Center. So think about what you might do to celebrate after your next interview. What are some things that you all would really enjoy to kind of be like, finished it, did good, or I just finished it. Go out to eat, definitely. Ice cream, fun stuff. Go to bed, take a nap. There's good things in nap. Video games, coffee, friends. These are great. Buy clothes. Some people are shoppers. Yeah, chocolate. If you like to do crafts, talk to a family member, talk to somebody, tell them what happened, tell them how it was, or change the subject altogether. These are great. I want you to kind of think through an entire day of interviewing, from the time you get up to the time you get there to actually being in the interview and after. It's a process. It's exhausting. And you do deserve to kind of celebrate that you got through it, no matter what the outcome is. So that's just a little bit about how to manage some of your anxiety. Again, if your anxiety is extreme and you're not in treatment, please get treatment. I'm a person who's like, please go see a counselor. But their mental health can affect your career development in a lot of different ways, not just anxiety, depression, things that are keeping you from being at your best. So just want to make sure that people understand that there are things you can do to prepare. There are things that we can do to help, but you also have the help of the counseling center on campus, or they even have some referrals to people in the area if you can't get in with them. As far as coming to see us, the counseling center, Career Counseling Center, is here on the 3rd floor of Hendricks. Summer hours are here. Drop-ins are Monday and Wednesday, 2 to 4. And then we have some appointments that you can get into Clemson Job Link to schedule. And this is where you go for Clemson Job Link. I think this might end up changing, but right now you go to the counseling section, kind of put in what you're looking for, and times that you're available, and we'll get you in for an appointment. And I left some time for questions. So Any questions that I can try to answer for anybody, you're welcome to either type it in the chat or you can put it into the Menti. I am game for that. So I hope this was helpful, kind of short. Want to be respectful of your time.
I do have a quick question. I'm so sorry my camera's being weird, Heather. This is Callie. Sorry.
Hey, Callie.
I want to be intentional with everybody's time. I don't want everybody to be like, oh no, the question. Sometimes I have a lot of students who come in and they don't realize that what like they're worried about upcoming interviews and they don't always label it as anxiety, but I know that's sort of what the issue is, right? And they can't always, which is not for me to say, right? I'm just here to help them career wise, but they can't always target that. And I try to make them feel better and uplift them and encourage these things you're saying. But I guess it's not really a question. Do y'all ever have that issue too? And sort of how do you navigate it?
Yeah, I think, a lot of times the anxiety shows up, and if a person's not had it before or they're not used to it being
Right.
this realm of life, like it's just career, it should be fine. One of the things that we try to do is just reflect back to the person.
Okay.
It kind of sounds like this is making you anxious. Tell me what about it makes you anxious. Let's
Okay.
talk through it, that kind of thing.
Okay.
But yeah, it's not up to me to say someone has an anxiety disorder, but it is something,
Right. Right.
it shows up. And whether you have a disorder or not, anxiety can show up no matter what.
Right.
So you definitely want to reflect to them and then give them some, some skills to do.
Okay, perfect. Because
So.
I want to validate them because what I know what they're feeling is very anxiety ridden, even if it's not even if it's not anxiety disorder, sort of like you were saying. But I do see that a lot where they are anxious, they're worried, things like that, but they can't really pinpoint that. So I just didn't know. That's great. Thank you so much. That's sort of what I was looking for to make sure I was taking the correct steps with that.
Yep. Thanks, Callie. Good to see you.
Thank you.
All right. So we have a question. What should you do when an interview question leaves you blank? That happens. Kind of you feel like the deer in the headlights. It can be very difficult. One of the things that we kind of can talk to you about here is you do need to take a breath. And occasionally you will come up to a question where you're just not sure how to answer, or your anxiety is like, oh, I didn't hear the question. So you can say to the interviewer, I'd like to give you a really thoughtful answer. Can I have just a second to think about it? Now, you can't say that for everything, for every question, but that might help you. And if you didn't hear it because your anxiety is whirring in your ear, you can just say, I'm sorry, can you repeat the question? I just want to make sure I'm understanding what you've asked. So you won't want to do that for every particular one, but you do probably want to do that if you are drawing a blank, because you do want to answer appropriately. I think I missed a question. Let me get back up. How do you deal with post-interview anxiety while waiting for a response? Oh, that's hard. One of the things to consider is hopefully the interviewer has kind of given you next steps. If they haven't, you can wait maybe a week or so and email the person. You've hopefully thanked them for the interview, but email and kind of follow up to see what the next steps are. One of the worst things is not knowing what's happening next. So while you're waiting for that response, a little bit of contact maybe with the employer to try to see where things are in the process, see if they have any other questions for you. Sometimes you're not going to get a response, and it may just be a matter of what do you want to do in the meantime? If you have a lot of anxiety while you're waiting for a response, you may want to start thinking about, okay, this might not be the exact thing that I'm getting. Let me just have in mind my next steps. You don't have to start on the next steps, but you can have your next steps ready for when it's time. So I hope that's helpful. Let me make sure that I answered that one. Answered that one. All right. What is the biggest piece of advice you would give to someone who's about to go into an interview and they are nervous? I think one of the main things is to just know you're going to be nervous, but you will get through this. So if the anxiety is there, start with your breath. Start thinking to slow your heart rate. When you start talking, if you notice you're talking really fast, start to pace your talking a little bit. And sometimes one piece of advice for some people is to go in acting as if you are the person they're going to hire, and be an actor. Act as if you are already hired. What are you bringing? What do you want them to know about you in the first few days that you're there? You don't want to like jump over into the confidence and be like, I got all this. You guys don't need to ask me a question. I'm now your boss. But you can think about, what is the next step? How can I ensure that they see me for who I am? Let me make sure that I am presenting myself in the best way possible. Take a few breaths. If it's not quite time to go in, if you're there very early, see if you can walk around the parking lot, walk around the building, or sit in your car, take a deep breath. If it is virtual, just go ahead and sit down, see if you can do some breathing techniques. A lot of these are on apps. You can do a lot of different free apps for these kinds of things. So you might decide to do that as well. Hopefully that helps a little bit. The recording will be uploaded. I think it's going to be uploaded on our YouTube channel. So you should be able to see it. It might not be uploaded right away. I think it takes a little bit to get, but you'll be able to take a look at it. Advice: if one's breathing pattern increases and it's preventing you from speaking clearly in an interview, that's hard. If you really find that you're not able to get your breathing under control, start to focus on something else. Focus on the other person. Focus on what they're saying. Ask them for just a moment. Just let them know. And it's okay to say, I'm a little bit anxious. I think I'm getting ahead of myself. I want to take just a minute to take a breath. If you're not speaking clearly, if it's like physically not speaking clearly, or if you're kind of rambling, that's where you go back into some of your skills. And some of the skills that you can have for interviews are preparing your questions, your answers in the STAR method. Can be something to consider. If it truly is affecting things, you may decide you want to disclose. If it's truly affecting and you can't do that, you feel like this is not the right time for it, you might ask if there's, would it be possible for me to take a quick restroom break? I think most people know you're going to be nervous. They might recognize what's happening and they might be like, yes, take a minute. Sometimes they'll offer you water. You can take a sip of water, take a breath, and try to move forward. I know that's really hard though. Should you ask the interviewer what you did wrong if you don't get the job? This is something that you can do. You can ask for feedback. Don't necessarily need to say, what did I do wrong? But you could say, I think this is a connection point. Even if you didn't get the job now, this might be another company interview person that you want to stay connected with. So just following up with them with a thank you so much for this opportunity, the experience. Although I'm disappointed that I didn't get the job, do you mind if I ask for a little feedback on what I can do to improve for future interviews? Was there anything in particular that stood out that I didn't answer or that maybe didn't get across the correct answer? Because there are a lot of times when you didn't do anything wrong. There's just so many people interviewing that someone else was just slightly more qualified or maybe more qualified. So it's okay to ask, certainly. All right. Is it a good idea for an interviewee to start with a casual conversation to help settle your nerves? Or let the interview direct the convo? I would let the interviewer direct the conversation. They typically will start with some small talk. They typically have their agenda. They're going to come in, establish rapport a little bit. They might tell you a little bit about what the interview is going to look like. And then they'll start in on the questions, but they're not normally just going to sit down and boom, ask you the question as you're walking through to the interview room. If you are in the Zoom room, they'll probably introduce themselves, take a minute. But I would let the interviewer direct the conversation, but as they ask questions, I would feel more comfortable getting a little more conversational with them. Just don't get too at ease. You want to make sure to keep it professional. Oh, how to stop feeling overwhelmed by the job application process. Looking for a job can feel like a full-time job. So thinking about what keeps you from feeling in control, what's overwhelming you. And it could just be the sheer number of jobs that are out there, or you don't know what it is that you want to do. So you're just applying to everything. One of the things you can do is maybe narrow the focus a little bit. Some people will start applying to tons of jobs, but they're not necessarily applying to jobs that they want or that they're qualified for, or that are at the in the industry that you're hoping for. So doing a little research, talking to some of us, some career counselors, to try to help you set up a strategy. Sometimes that is depending on who you are. If you're a planner person or a spreadsheet person, keeping things organized and then setting aside time for the job application process so that it doesn't become 8 hours a day. Setting aside an hour or two a day, setting aside an hour or two a week. The more you know about this process, the better you're going to feel. The more you apply, the better you're going to feel. But you want to make sure to kind of focus in on the things that you want. You're going to get a better return on investment that way. Overwhelm is definitely a hard one. Okay, yeah, I hope I answered that one about asking about if you didn't get the job. Let's see. I think we might be at the end of the questions. So, were there any questions in the chat? I can stop sharing here.
Nope, we have no questions in the chat.
Well, I hope this was helpful. Like I said, anxiety is can be debilitating, but you can kind of use it for good. You can use that little bit of anxiety to help get the adrenaline going so that you're focused and that you will hopefully feel like you can ace the interview. But feel free to come see us, come talk to us. We'll help you practice. That might help a little bit too. That's all I got. If there are any other questions, you're welcome to kind of stay on and ask after.
Thanks everybody for coming.
You can stop recording if you want.